Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Jay from Coding with Jaybird, where I upload weekly tutorials to help build your confidence in coding. Today we're going to talk about switch statements and how we write them. Let's get started. Here's my switch statements project folder, which I've opened in VS Code, and you can see I have a switch-statements.html file, which I've linked to the styles.css and the main.js. Let's start coding in our main.js. So let's talk a little bit about switch statements. Now, switch statements are excellent when you want to run a block of code based on a condition. First, the switch statement evaluates this expression, and this happens only once. It then looks through each case in order. So here we have three cases, case value A, case value B, and a default. And it looks through each one of these in order and compares the value of the expression, so this value, to the value of the individual cases. So it would compare expression to value A, and then it would compare expression to value B, and so on. Now it does this by using the strict comparison operator, which is the triple equal sign, meaning that it checks that the value and the data type both match. If a match is found, the associated case code is executed. If there isn't a match, then this default block of code is executed. All right, let's start practicing some of this code. I'm going to start by creating a variable called pet. So let pet equal. For now, I'm going to leave this empty and we'll come back and select something in a bit. So let's write our switch statement. Switch, and then our expression that we want to evaluate. So what I want to do is I want to check the condition on pet. We want to follow this with curly braces. And inside the curly braces, we write our different case statements. So I would have my first case, let's say dog, and this is a string, hence why it's in quotation. Follow this with a colon, and then the block of code that I want to run if the case happens to be dog. So let's say I'm going to alert a message. Dogs are loyal companions. Now, before I move on to the next case statement, I need to write a break. Now, what is a break? A break is used to break out of this switch block. So if pet equals dog, then case dog would match the value of the expression, which is pet equals dog, and then this code block would execute. Once it executes, I would break out of the switch statement. So let's write another case statement. So let's do a case of cat. And this time I want to alert to the browser, cats are very affectionate. And once again, we want to break. Let's have another case statement. This time we'll say case hamster. And if pet happens to equal hamster, I want to alert to the browser, hamsters love to run on their wheel. And once again, we want to break. Now, if the user happens to select a different string value, not dog, not cat, not hamster, if pet equals something else, we want to have a default as well. So here we're going to have a default value. This default code block runs if there is no case match. Oops, there is no case match. So like I said, if pet equals something else, like let's say fish, we wouldn't catch any one of these three cases, and we'd fall into the default code block. And here I just want to alert a generic message. All pets bring joy to our lives, which they do. Let's test out different values inside of pet. So right now I'm going to make the pet variable equal dog. And when I save this, we'll see dogs are loyal companions. And when I hit OK, we see our HTML page. So what's happening is when I select dog, this pet value is evaluated the one time. So then in the switch statements, it understands pet equals dog. And then one by one, it goes through each one of these case statements trying to find a match. So when it finds a match, in this case, it catches in the first case. It then follows the code inside that code block, which tells the browser to alert a message, dogs are loyal companions, and then it breaks out of the switch statement. Now let's change this to something else. Let's change this to hamster. And when I save it, we'll see hamsters love to run on their wheel. So in this case, it evaluates that pet equals hamster, and then it tries to compare it to each one of these case statements. So does hamster equal dog? Nope. Does hamster equal cat? Nope. Does hamster equal hamster? Yes, it does. Hence, we're in this code block, and we alert a message to the browser, hamsters love to run on their wheel. And then once again, we break out of the switch statement. Now we can also store a switch statement inside of a function. So let's try to write this exact same switch statement, but in a function. So for now, just to stop this alert from popping up, I'm going to comment this code block out. Now let's store a similar switch statement inside of a function. So we'll store a switch statement inside a function. And we'll use traditional way of making functions because we haven't really talked about arrow functions yet and ES6. So for now, I'll just say function, and I'll call the function choose_pet. Now this pet is going to expect some string value, and we'll call that a parameter pet inside the function. Now similar to the switch statement above, we're going to have a switch statement here as well, and it'll take the expression pet. Then we have our curly braces, and we need to write our different case statements. So let's say we have our case of dog. And I won't get into the code yet. I'll just write my different case statements. We'll have a case of cat, and we'll have a case of hamster, and lastly, we'll have our default case. Now, I'm going to be calling this function from somewhere else as well. So let's call the function. And what I want to do is I want to console log us calling this function. So choose pet. And here I want to pass in a value. So we'll leave the value alone for now. Let's get back to that in a minute. So since I'm doing the console log here, I simply want the code block that's selected. So let's say it's dog. I want that code block to just return a value to this choose pet. So the way I would do that is simply by writing return and then the same sentence. Dogs are loyal companions. Now, in a case like this, when we have a return, we don't need to write the break. This switch statement will immediately stop executing once it hits this return. So what happens is this function by itself does nothing. Only when we get to line 33 do we actually call this function. So let's pass in the value of dog. When we pass this value of dog in and call this choose_pet function, pet stores the value of dog, which then enters the switch statement, and we do an expression check of dog. And we check to see if the expression which equals dog matches this case or this case or this case, and if not, then it falls into the default case. Since we know that it's going to match dog, we know that we're in this code block. Now this code block runs, so we return dogs are loyal companions to line 33. And because it's a return statement, we break out of this switch statement. Okay, so let's finish the rest of these off. If it's cat, we want to say cats are very affectionate. And if we fall into the hamster case, we want to return the string hamsters love to run on their wheel. Oops. Now the default, let's not forget that, we'd like to return all pets bring joy to our lives. Okay, so let's test this out. I'm going to change this to cat. I'll save this. And let's open up the console. And here you can see cats are very affectionate. And if I change this from cat to fish and save it, we can see all pets bring joy to our lives. All right, so everything works really well. Now, something we don't know yet is this default statement doesn't have to be at the very end of our code block. So we could effectively, let's say, cut this out of here and place this at the very top. And when I save it, it'll run just the same. The only key difference is we need to make sure that if it's not the last item in the switch statement, we need to either have a return or a break. So if I were to come up here and let's uncomment this out again, and then I moved this default, so let's cut this here and put it up here, moved it to the top, I'm going to get an error when I save this. Okay, so let's change pet from hamster to, let's say something else. Let's say fish again. So we see all pets bring joy to our lives. So we know that we're in the default case block, which is great. However, when I hit OK, watch what happens. It says dogs are loyal companions. So it actually moved on to the next case and that next code block instead of stopping the switch statement. So what that tells us is if we have a default at the very top of our code, we need to remember that we must put a break in here. All right, everyone, that's it for today's video on switch statements. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so I can continue to make more awesome coding videos for you in the weeks to come. Until next week, keep on coding.